Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're going to explore the science behind happiness and talk about rediscovering our dreams, embracing radical responsibility, and taking actionable steps towards increased happiness and confidence. Joining me for this conversation is Dr. Wendy O'Connor, a Stanford-trained positive psychologist and success coach for female entrepreneurs. Dr. O'Connor uses her strengths, values, and evidence-based success method to help women design meaningful, intentional, and fulfilling lives and businesses. Dr. O'Connor has helped thousands of women worldwide create a life or business they're obsessed with, and today she's here to share that expertise with us. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So let's start out with, I love getting the story behind how people get here because none of us ever come on a straight path. So what led you into focusing on happiness and positive psychology and all that stuff?
It was a big switch for me. So my first several years of my career were spent in the clinical space. I helped people with depression and anxiety. I had 2 thriving private practices. Loved it for a season of my life, like really felt such meaning and purpose behind it. And then I went through a major life event of having 3 daughters, 15 months apart.
Wow.
And before I knew it, I had 3 girls under 2 in diapers, and life just felt so different. It wasn't anymore about feeling this really kind of lit up energy. It felt like there was a lot of energy of mine going out and really not as much coming back in anymore. And I had this conversation with my husband at the time, and I had said, gosh, like, I just feel like this isn't it anymore. Like, I'm burnt out and I feel like I'm going through the motions and I'm not really loving it the way I used to. Something's got to change. And that's when I started to explore what could shift. And I first explored it from an internal place. Like, what do I need to change in my life to feel better in my life? You know, I have these amazing babies. They're healthy and happy. There's so much to be grateful for. And yet feels like something's missing. And yet it feels like this isn't quite it. There's got to be some way to experience more fulfillment throughout these seasons and chapters of life. So I came across positive psychology and I started to implement the practices on myself and started to realize like that's exactly what I wanted to help women do, was go from this place of surviving to truly a place of thriving, and to do it in a way that felt fun and exciting and felt like we were taking care of ourselves and we matter and our happiness matters not only to us, but to everyone we love. It was this journey of really just wanting to be my best so that I could also serve better to other people. But also I needed to change who I served. Like, it was a whole revamp of my life, which happens. And I really realized that I was ready to complete the clinical chapter of, in my practices, going to the office, treating people with anxiety and depression every day. Like, I really wanted to wean off of that and I wanted to start something different. And that's when I got into the coaching space and started coaching women all over the world on how to be happier and really what the science is behind it and how to use those techniques to build a fulfilling life by design.
You know what jumped out at me when you were telling that story is how you said, you know, you had these 3 healthy, beautiful babies, and yet you still felt like something was missing. And it just struck me that we should come back to that, because I think so many of us almost feel guilty wanting more, almost feel guilty that they feel like something's missing, right? When you think about it, like I have a husband, I have a good life, I have a good job, I have these great kids, but yet something's not right. Something's not there. And that's okay. I just want to say that out loud. That's okay.
Yeah, this is the number one thing that I've seen over the years. Women will come to me and be interested in working together, and inevitably they'll say something along the lines of, like, don't get me wrong, my life isn't that bad. There's so much to be grateful for. Like, it's really a good life. It's just ...
Yeah.
And that's the dot, dot, dot is everything. Like life is meant to be seized and savored. You're meant to live to your full potential if that's what you desire. You're meant to have it all if that's what you desire. And the idea that we dilute everything, our dreams, our wants, our desires, our opinions, our feelings, in the name of I should be grateful for, is just not the vibe. And the way I teach it is you get to be so grateful for all that you have, and you're allowed to want for more. And
Yes.
pursue more and to design more and to create more. And it doesn't make you ungrateful. It's not a trade. It's not if I'm pursuing something bigger and it's more exciting over here, it doesn't mean I'm less grateful over here. You get to have gratitude. And so I always say it's really about the and. It's not a but. It's not I'm grateful, but it's really I'm grateful and I'm looking for something more, and that's okay.
Yeah, I love that clarification. I want to go back to, so you talk about happiness, the science of happiness, and obviously that's a lot of the work you do, but you also talk about building a flourishing life, a flourishing business. Tell me what the difference is.
So when we think about building a life by design, it's really a combination of what it means to be happy and to flourish. It's like the same thing. When we look at the science of happiness and positive psychology, there's a model actually that will help you flourish more, meaning help you live more into the good life, help you be happier. And that model is something that I'll teach my clients, but it's the same thing. It's like living by design, living fulfilled, living in a flourishing way is about taking certain parts of what we've learned about our lives and our relationships and really optimizing them, really turning up the dial on certain aspects of our lives to really get the most out of those experiences. And just seeing what those components are can be very eye-opening for people. A lot of women will come into my world and say things like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start. Like, I just know I want to feel better. I just know I want to wake up excited. I just know that I want to create success in my life and business, but I don't want to feel stale and I don't want to feel turned off and disgusted and tired of it. I want to feel really involved and invested in it. So the flourishing life, the happy life, it's really about turning up the dial on some of these pieces that make the biggest difference.
Let's talk about that. People coming in and not really knowing where to start, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you and explore is very close to my own heart. And it's around dreaming, right? Knowing what we really dream to do, knowing what would really fill us up. I feel like so many of us lose sight of that. And so many of us sort of forget how to do it. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about what you experience and how you help people lead them back into getting some vision around or framing up something around what they really want to do and what they really dream to do.
Yeah. A lot of people know quicker what they don't want than what they want. And that actually was my position too. So in the clinical world, when I was thinking this is probably the time to complete this chapter, I feel like I need something different. That was my experience. It was, well, what is that going to be? And I had no idea because I only knew what I didn't want. And I didn't know even yet because I hadn't explored it. I didn't even know which parts I didn't want. I just knew the whole thing felt like enough. And so the way I take my clients through is the same way I went through, which is, what don't you like? If you don't know yet what you do want, start with what you don't want. That's sometimes easier, right? It's even if it's I've had women have a hard time even thinking about like, what's my favorite food or what's my favorite color, what's my favorite movie. And so you can even start with like, well, what food do you hate? Like if I was like, I'm going to serve you this thing tonight and you're like, I don't want that. What's that thing you hate? What's the thing you don't like? Starting there can actually help you just get comfortable going through this practice of exploring who you are. And then you get into the details. So then we explore different parts of life. Well, what feels good in this part of your life and what doesn't feel so great? Well, why doesn't it feel so great? Okay, well, if it could be better, what would that look like? And we go through all of those parts of life to kind of play in the space of where are you unhappy or where's the gaps in your fulfillment? And if you were to do anything in this one section of life and you had a magic wand or you had full permission to change it as much as you wanted to, what do you think you'd start with, or what do you think you'd envision there? So we really piece it apart because I think a lot of times it can be overwhelming us to just take the whole and to say, here's the big vision. You know, people will ask me like, what's your vision for 5 years or 10 years or something? And I'm like, there's no vision. Like it's too big. It's like more. It's just more happiness, more fun, more travel, more experiences, more adventure, more memories, more time with the family. Like it's more. So the idea that we are supposed to have this like kind of plan mapped out for our happiness for the next 5 or 10 years is really overwhelming for a lot of us. And we do a lot better when there's a very specific question being asked. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy or satisfied are you in your marriage? And then we're like, oh, yes, I understand now.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So that's how we break it down. And then really reconnecting with the vision is just giving yourself that permission to play. It's giving yourself permission to play in the space of possibility, potential, what if, wouldn't it be fun? Like those kinds of questions I'll talk to my clients a lot about, of just exploring together fun ideas, and none of them being off the table, none of them being stupid. It doesn't matter if they're practical or not. We just get to explore together with no consequence. There's no commitment. There's no investment. It's just exploration. And that's something I think for a lot of women, they don't take the time to do because life, gets in the way.
Yeah, life gets busy, but I love the exploration questions, because even when you were saying, take it, part by part, and then try to put together what you would dream of. What do you want that to look like if you could just wave the magic wand? I still think people get stuck. They still don't know what they want when they wave the magic wand. But maybe if you can get people comfortable with just throw something out there, just if you had to throw something out there and just start getting them to kind of do that, to loosen up to the idea. I imagine it takes time though.
It depends on the person. I will have people come in and they're like, I know exactly what I want. I just have no idea how to get there. So that will be the path forward, is us mapping out, how do you get from A to B? How do you get from this side of the riverbank to the other side? How do you get from where you are to what you want? That's most of the work that I do. And there will be sometimes folks that are like, I'm just not sure, but that actually doesn't take very long. In my world, it doesn't take very long, actually. Like when I think about it, there's a path that I take women through that's just a very kind of like on purpose guide. So it's not like there's exploring, but it's also contained in this journey together. So when you hire a mentor, hire a coach, or work with a therapist, somebody outside of you that's going to kind of help you stay focused on a journey, it allows you to be exploratory, but also still focused and getting somewhere. And people have ahas and realizations constantly, because it can happen really fast when you know who you are.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work actually comes down to helping women learn more about who they are in terms of their strengths and their values and their desires. And once we do that, and once they have a better sense of what those three pieces are, then decisions get a lot easier to make. It just kind of pieces together like a puzzle.
That makes total sense to me, because then it's easier to decide, does this align with my values and my, who I am and what I love? I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like your point about working with somebody. Fantastic if they can find a good coach, fantastic if they have a therapist they love. But even if you don't have either of those things, find yourself a really good friend that will tell you the truth about things, right? And push you where you need to be pushed and support you where you need to be supported. But I think it's important to note that working with somebody else, I think, does help you step back and look at things a little bit differently and from a different perspective. And they probably poke and prod you in the right way. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and they can see beyond what you can see. So I'll always be in some type of mentorship because my mentors see beyond what I can see. I see my thoughts and my feelings, my experience, my evidence, but there's also the limitations in my thinking. There's also the stories in my mind. There's also these pieces where somebody who has or has made it to the next level or has a different type of wisdom or expertise can see things that I don't see.
Yeah.
And so that actually helps speed up time when it comes to creating happiness or creating success. And not that it's meant to be this super fast overnight experience, but most of us, when we go into self-progress, doing personal growth work or professional changes, we actually don't really desire them to take forever. We want to feel better like yesterday.
Yeah.
So when we can use certain tools to speed time up a little bit, that makes a big difference.
I agree with that completely. I mean, one of the premises behind doing this whole podcast was to help people find some of the messages and curate some of the information, because I feel like, as different as we all are, we're so similar, right? And we go through so many of the same things, and to be able to leverage other people's expertise or experiences to help you get there faster, that's just such a great tool to be able to share with people. So I love that. I want to talk a little bit about a concept that you talk about, which is radical responsibility. Share with us what that means to you.
Yeah, this is something I incorporate in my work every day. So it's very easy for us to go through life and to feel like the victims of our lives, like we are reacting to our lives. Life is happening to us. Life is throwing curveballs. And so we're just trying to survive them and wait for the next shoe to drop or whatever it is. And really, when we think about radical responsibility, it's about taking ownership over our experience of our lives. It's about taking ownership of the experience of your life. You'll notice I'm not saying to take ownership over everything that happens in your life, everything that happens to you or for you or by you or whatever it is, but it's really about taking ownership over the experience. I have a choice of how I experience this season of life or how I experience this conversation or this interaction or this email that I just got or this meeting that we just had. I have ownership over my experience. And so there's power there. And a lot of times women don't recognize how powerful they really are in being able to change, shift, modify their experience of their lives. And a lot of times people will think that everything outside of themselves needs to be the things to change. I need to move to the next house. I need to change the school. I need to change my job. I need to change the husband or whatever. It's like something outside of me has to change in order to make me happy internally. And when we think about radical responsibility, it's actually about looking at the inside first. It's looking at our internal experience first and really saying, I have power here to decide if I'm going to make a big deal of this thing going on in my life. I have the power to decide how I'm going to respond when I don't have the results that I want right away. And taking responsibility is about curiosity, like what's going on in my life? Why isn't it what I want it to be? I'm taking responsibility for my experience of my life and how I might want it to change. It's not a blame game. So it doesn't matter if so-and-so said this or did this, or this result didn't happen because somebody else messed it up. It's really about coming back to ourselves and choosing to rise again and again as just radically responsible people directing our lives.
It's interesting that you noted how people often think that the external change is what will really make a difference. For me, it feels like that's so common, and that is typically where people start when they start to notice they're unhappy and they start to notice that they need change. It seems like the pattern that I see is that most of us look at exactly what you said. Do I change my job? Do I change my marriage situation? Do I change my living situation? It's so funny that not many of us think to start internally, and that is always where we have to end up to make the change. It's so interesting to me.
It's so interesting. It really is. It's just not something that feels second nature to most people.
Yeah.
It feels like the easiest things to see are the things that I can change just because I can get my hands on them and I can actually make something different.
Yeah.
It feels more daunting, I think, to a lot of people, but also very unclear of what does that even mean? How do I make it internal change? How do I take responsibility for my experience when things are bad? It doesn't feel as clear as like, just go get a new car.
Yeah.
Just go move. Just go get a job, a different job or whatever. That seems very concrete. And our brains like concrete. Our brains like predictable. Our brains like the safety. So it's not going to be this experience where many people really want to do the inner work because that sounds uncomfortable. That sounds messy. That sounds unpredictable. It's like everything opposite of what your brain wants.
And all a little bit true. All a little bit true, right?
It is uncomfortable. It is messy. It's not a linear experience. Where do you even begin? But it really is the path to creating happiness and success. It's always about being in touch with where you are, who you are, what you want, what you don't, and really letting yourself be bold enough to lead your life from that place.
Yeah. So let's take that a step further and try to bring it down to some tactical terms. So if I'm somebody that's feeling unrest, I'm feeling not very fulfilled, I'm not very happy, quote unquote, happy in my life, what are some tactical steps where you would maybe give people to say, start here? These are some baby steps that you can start changing the tide for yourself to bring a little more happiness into your life.
So there's the baby steps and there's the radical steps. And so everyone's going to be in a different place. I've had women in my world that are like, I want the full transformation now. I want to do it all. We're going all in. And let's just go through the car wash and like get the change happening stat. And then I'll have the women that come in and really feel easily intimidated or overwhelmed. And we do more of a baby step approach. So I say that because there is, I think, oftentimes an assumption that we all need baby steps. And I think that there's absolutely truth to that. If there's something super unfamiliar and overwhelming for us to start exploring that we don't know what to do. But I also want to speak to the people that are like, those all in women that are like, nope, I'm like ripping the Band-Aid. We're going all in. I don't need any sugarcoating here. So I'll speak to it in both ways. But where I would start with anybody is really, if we're talking about happiness, fulfillment to start, it's really going to be back to what's called the PERMA model. So there's a model in positive psychology called the PERMA model of flourishing. And in the PERMA model, there are different components of what it takes to really live the good life and to flourish fully. And those are broken down into PERMA. And then V has been added sometimes. So I love V because V is a fun one I'll talk about. So P stands for positive emotions, where I would start with somebody that says, I'm not feeling zest. I'm not excited. I'm not waking up on fire every day. I really want to feel more just like happy about my life and excited in my emotional state more of the time. That's where we would begin. And we'd begin by saying, okay, well, what does make you happy right now? Where do you feel lit up in any part of your life? What positive emotions do you experience these days? So they might say, look, I can't identify with zest or excitement, but I can identify with creativity or curiosity or hope. So we would start there. Okay, how do we kind of increase that? How do we turn up the dial on some positive emotions? What makes you feel positive emotions? Oh, when I was out with my girlfriend the other night, we had the best time. We were laughing our butts off and it was so fun. Or, when I went on this little day excursion by myself to the water and I just took a book and I read for hours. Whatever it is that makes us feel a positive emotion, we want to start to tune into those moments. And we want to amplify them. And the amplification of these happens for all components. So P is positive emotions, the easiest one for people to recognize when we talk about happiness. E is engagement. This is where you get into flow state. You lose track of time. You engage in an activity for the sake of doing it because you just love it. You love it for the sake of doing it, not necessarily the outcome. So this is where we talk about, okay, well, where do you lose track of time in your life? And many women are like, there's no time to lose track of. It's so big. I can't possibly do that. But it's really about like maybe you are reading a really good book. Maybe you have an incredible in-depth conversation with a friend and you lose track of time because you guys are just enjoying each other's company. Maybe you love listening to music or playing music or creating art. There's all these ways that we can connect with engagement. And engagement makes us really feel connected to something that is an expression of ourselves. And that feels really good. So that's the second letter of PERMA.
Okay, we got the P and the E, the R.
We got P. R is relationships. So positive relationships. And this is often one that's really big for people. And again, I focus on working with entrepreneurs. And I say this all the time, life and work are not separate. So who you are in life and what's going on in your life is 100% going to be leaking into or pouring into, depending on where you're at in your personal life, your work and your journey. So we really need to pay attention to the whole and to not thinking that we're compartmentalizing professional life and personal life. And so relationships come up everywhere, and they are a number one factor in our overall happiness. So our relationships really are important for us to think about which ones are positive, which ones add value to our lives, which ones do we enjoy, are trusting, are intimate, are reciprocal, like those things we think about, happy, healthy relationships. And then there may be some relationships we realize their presence of this person in our lives actually takes a toll on our happiness, actually drags us down a bit, actually kind of steals our spirit or our joy. And so we'll talk a lot about how to navigate relationships because we don't exist on our own in a vacuum. We're always connected to people, and how those relationships feel is going to play a major role in our overall flourishing. So that's the R. M is meaning. This is another big one for a lot of women, is like, what's my life about? What's the meaning? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? Like, what is this all for? So when we're connected to meaning, what really matters to us, it's going to feel a lot more full and a lot more thriving of a lifestyle than if we feel like we're going through the motions and life kind of feels hollow and isn't connected to anything meaningful. That's a big one.
People struggle with that one though, I bet.
Yes, because most people live this prescribed life.
Yeah.
Where they have gone through motions for decades because they were told to do life in a particular way. Yeah. And they wake up wondering why life feels kind of empty or kind of unsatisfying or kind of disconnected. And they're like, what did I do wrong? Well, you did nothing wrong, but this prescribed path that everyone's following is actually the problem.
Yeah.
So this is where meaning really comes up for a lot of people, especially I think as we go through our seasons of life and get older, because we're all of a sudden like, wait a second, like, was I tricked? what's going on? Like, I was told to do all these 10 things in this order. I did them to the letter. And now I wake up and I'm like, what is my life about? So it's almost like this rite of passage, I feel like, for so many people, is to figure out, what does it mean to you? And so that we explore a lot. And then A is accomplishment. So it's really about the achievement. So what are your achievements? What are your accomplishments? Now, this is where women give themselves a hard time and they say, I haven't accomplished anything. I haven't achieved anything. Nothing I've done is great, And so this is where we actually get into some of the details around achievements. Can be taking a shower on a hard day. Achievements can be reading for your own good, like a page of a book, a chapter of a book could be your accomplishment for the day.
Yeah.
The achievements are not like I became a 5-time best-selling author. I'm the CEO of 16 companies. I ran 5 marathons internationally. We put ourselves on this path of comparison to unrealistic expectations of what even defines achievement. And I think that this is a place that gets very slippery for a lot of people. So
I love that one.
Yeah.
I think we're not great at being cheerleaders for ourselves. And we, just what you said, we overlook what could be considered the small things. We don't want to brag about them because even to ourselves, because we're like, that's just what I got to do. That's just every day. But we need to acknowledge them more.
We really do.
Celebrate the wins.
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's so few people that are ever going to be like, oh, listen to you bragging about your shower today. Like, no one's going to care. People are happy for you. We all get it. We've been through hard seasons of life. It's really important with achievement that you allow yourself to think about it in like the macro and the micro. Like, I think about what are some of the big achievements maybe you've created in your life. And then what are some of the more micro achievements and accomplishments that you have experienced in the last month or day or week? And when we allow it to be kind of both sides, there's a little bit more permission that people have and that they will take in to be able to look at something like bigger than just what you think achievement means. How many awards do you have hanging on your wall? That's not it.
Yeah.
And then lastly is vitality. So that's my little V guy. I love the V because vitality is all about health of mind and body. So when we wake up and we feel healthy in mind and body, this is going to be a huge piece of feeling like we can flourish in life, right? I think about, I had chronic, and I still do, I have chronic back pain. I've had it for a few years now. And it really ramped up over just during COVID, after COVID. And it got to the place where it was very difficult to do anything. I couldn't play with the girls and run around as a parent. I couldn't really go work out unless my movements were super controlled. And it was really this period of not feeling alive and well. It was like feeling like my body was betraying me. And I had these thoughts of how I'd like to use my body, but it couldn't work that way. So vitality is one of those things that's like, it's easy for us to minimize the importance of feeling alive and really healthy in mind and body, because especially as women typically will let their mental health or even physical health go because life happens and things are busy and kids and obligations. But it really is a big piece of how you feel overall when you show up to a day. Are you showing up every day feeling clear-headed, feeling content, feeling like you have your plan, you know what you're doing, you're showing up focused? You also feel like your body's in agreement with your goals and your life and your dreams? Or does it feel like that's actually a distraction? And for a lot of people, if we're not hiring the coach or the therapist, or we're not hiring the trainer or getting to the gym or eating healthy, we feel like it's actually a distraction. And it robs us of the full experience of the life we actually want to live.
I love that. I feel like we just got a mini master class. So thank you. Thank you for running through all of that. Right. So I had one more area. So that was like all around happiness and fulfillment. But I want to ask you about confidence. So building our confidence is something I think we get to this point where for some of us, like life just got crazy and busy and we lose our confidence along the way that we could step out of that prescribed role. How do we start building our confidence back and give ourselves the credit to know that we're going to be okay to move and try something different?
So you're okay now. You're okay now. So you'll be okay then. You're okay. You've been okay. You're always got your back. You're always come out okay. Like there's hard seasons, there's tough moments, there's definitely life-changing experiences, and you're still okay. So that's where I always begin is like, but you're okay now. Why would you not be okay? Why would this be the one thing that's going to knock you out? And everything else you've experienced in your life hasn't knocked you out to like not come back and ask for more. this is not going to be the thing. So it's just that reminder of like, you're okay now. So you'll be okay. Why would you not be okay? Why is this the thing? And a lot of times for
Yeah.
people, that's enough to kind of shake them out of like, oh yeah, right. Like, why am I making this out to be this huge thing when I've experienced even bigger things than taking a risk over here or making a change over here? So that's one piece of it. And the second piece of it really is you won't feel confident until you master something. Really, the definition of confidence is mastery, is being able to master a skill, master these tools, master something. And you can't master anything without trying and learning and doing and failing and falling and pivoting and getting back up. And so confidence won't come, and the mastery piece of confidence won't come until you actually do it 1,000 times. But the other piece of it, which is the piece that matters more, is the self-worth piece, the self-esteem piece, the believing that you're worth it, that you're worth pursuing what you want, that you are deserving of what you want and happy. And this is another piece that gets people tripped up. Like, well, who am I to go for it? Who am I to take this risk? Who am I to make a change? Who am I? I should just shut up and sit down and be grateful and call it a day. But when we have our own backs and we just remind ourselves, like, I'm just as deserving as the next one, and so is she, and we all are. And so go for it. But you have to go for it and lean into courage. The confidence is not going to come with you out the gate. The excitement will, the nerves will, and the courage needs to. That's a non-negotiable.
I love that point about courage. So it made me think of two things. So I'm constantly, probably ad nauseum, saying that we have to get more comfortable being uncomfortable, because I think that's very hard for most of us. And that does take courage, but also having the courage to try something new and allow ourselves not to be quote unquote perfect at it, right? Because many of us, again, the prescribed life we grew up, we think everything, we have to do everything perfectly. We have to figure out how to master everything. And it's okay not to be. It's okay to be starting out and to just be a novice at it. It's okay to just go into it with curiosity. And so I love that piece. I love that recognition that you just need the courage and be willing and trust yourself and love yourself enough to go after something, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It will.
It just will. And there's no other way, really. Like there's no other way through. So, and I'll share a little bit about this because I think this would help your listeners too when they kind of visualize change and taking risk. But when we think about a growth mindset, we think about getting to a growth zone of change. We're in our comfort zone. That's where most of us live. It's also where I call it the dream graveyard. That's where dreams go to die. Your dreams will die in the comfort zone. So don't stay here for very long, or you'll have a lot of tombstones around you. So you leave the comfort zone. Let's say you want to pursue something new. The next thing you're going to go into is the fear zone. It's not a zone you get to skip, actually. Like it's there.
Come on.
It's like, we can't just fast forward it or, just jump a chapter. For most people, fear zone is going to be where they get tripped up. As soon as we leave the comfort zone and it's scary, your brain goes, oh, that's too much. Get back. Like, this is a bad idea. This is the wrong idea. Like, you're all wrong about this dream. This is a
gazillion
terrible
%.
dream. Yeah. You're like, this is the worst dream. What are you thinking? Go back home. But once you get through the fear zone, there's another zone waiting for you. And a lot of people don't know this. And that next zone is the learning zone. The learning zone. And this learning zone is a beautiful place that you're less afraid because you kind of like you kind of started to like get comfortable in the cold water, right? You jump into the water. This is how I picture it. You jump into the water, it's freezing. Your body kind of freaks out for a second, and then you start to acclimate. So you go through the fear zone, you acclimate in the learning zone, and you're just learning and learning and learning. Guess what this does? Boosts confidence.
Yeah.
But confidence doesn't get boosted in the fear zone. This is about like just trying to get through it to the learning zone and not quit on yourself because you feel nervous. And then the learning zone is the growth zone where you're actually like, this is who you are now. So it's just the way I picture it in my mind is always, well, it's when we try to get past skip the fear part, I'm like, but you can't, you see the graph, right? Like, and then you go here, like yes, like you need to go this way. Like this is the way to where you want to go. But a lot of people try to make the fear place optional or try to cut it out altogether, or they take it and they misinterpret fear as the wrong message, as a message on the wrong path instead of, ooh, you must be onto something really good because you're nervous. And that's something
great point,
right? So
what
do you think about it?
I love that. I love that analogy. I love that description. And then I would also probably say, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's not necessarily a linear path either. My thought is you probably can move out of your comfort zone, go into the fear zone, get a little nervous, dip your toe in, jump back into the comfort zone, jump back into the fear zone, move to the learning zone, and then maybe something gets too hard and it pushes you back a step. Is that accurate that it doesn't necessarily?
That's 100% right. Yeah. I think about it as my journey. So I have a lot of comfort in the clinical space. I have my offices, I have my chair I sit in every day. I have my patients I know. Everything's comfortable and cushy and fine. And then you jump into this whole world of the wild, wild west of coaching, and you suddenly become this coach and you're learning how to mentor in a different way, and you're doing it virtual, over the internet and Zoom. And then that's out of your comfort zone and you're trying to figure that out and you learn and you master it. Okay, amazing. Then you're like, oh, wow. Okay. So for a coaching business, I need to focus a bit more on social media. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to show my face on social media. What do you mean do a live? Like, are you kidding me? I have nothing to say. Nothing to say. No one wants to hear it. Why do I have to talk to people? Can't I just serve from behind the scenes? So for me, that was the biggest transition. The clinical world, you hang a shingle, no one knows, it's all private, you're behind closed doors. And then suddenly in this world, it was so much exposure and visibility and vulnerability. And I was just like, this is crazy. So back in the fear zone I went, and I did all the messy lives and fumbled over my words, and I still do to this day. And that's fine, because in the process, you get better, you refine, you get more comfortable.
Yeah.
Then there's the new fear zone. I don't want to go on a podcast. I have nothing to say. No one wants to hear me. I don't want to go on. Why do I have to go on a podcast, right? It's like, oh, well, that actually could be really fun. And I actually like talking about these things, but now I have to do it on camera. It's recorded and it's out there forever. So there's so many levels to our experience of fear, comfort, mastery, fear, comfort, and we go through it and through it and through it, and it's honestly never ending. But the more comfortable you get understanding that this is the path, this is the way, and we can't just skip the steps, the more you can notice, like, I do want to be on a podcast and I'm scared. And it can be an and I'm not going to wait till I'm not scared, because I'm never going to not be scared until maybe I do 1,000 podcast episodes and I'm like, this isn't scary anymore. I get nervous every single time and do it because I love it. Right? So that's the big piece.
I love it. I feel seen too, and I'm laughing because these guys that listen all the time know you just described everything about me in this journey on podcasting, and all of it, all the pieces and parts. I was scared to death to start. I started, then I'm scared to death of the social media. Then I start that. And then somebody posts my stuff on LinkedIn. I'm been in the professional corporate world forever. And so I had this moment of, oh my gosh, like, oh, take it back. I don't want everybody out there to see it, right? And it's just another step in the, no, you're going to be okay. It's okay. What's going to happen? Like, you got to talk yourself off the ledge, and it just keeps reoccurring if you keep playing. But it's good. It's good stuff. You feel alive is what I talked about. I just did a post on this not too long ago, but it's scary too. It's scary.
Just like we talk about, you can be grateful and desire more. You can be afraid and still go for it. And this is the thing. A lot of people slow their journeys down tremendously or stall out completely because we're waiting for fear to pass before we move forward, or we're waiting for this to change before we have the green light, but it's not going to change. Like, you get to be grateful and want for more. You're going to be nervous and go for it. It's just, these are just get to be two peas in a pod.
I love that. Learning to say and instead of but was a big thing. I think that's a good first step for a lot of people. Because that comes up a lot just in normal conversation, and you can kind of start switching your paradigm of thinking. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't want to keep you all day, though I could talk to you all day. I want to ask you if there's one thing you want people to take away from this. What would it be?
Give yourself permission to design a life you love. It's that simple. It's give yourself permission to design a life you love. If you're an entrepreneur, give yourself permission to create success by your design. Do it the way you love to. Do it in the way that aligns for you. Stop just thinking everyone else knows better, or you need to do it that way or their way. That really, you need to let yourself just have full permission to do it your way. Have fun, play. There's no rules. And if there are, break them. Let yourself create new ones. Like, this is really meant to be the space where we claim our lives. And no one else is going to design it for us. And so if we are just passively, and I think about this a lot, like, are you acting as the driver of your life or the passenger of your life? And I want you to give yourself permission to be the driver of your life. And I don't care if I say that and you're thinking about your marriage, or you're thinking about parenting, or you're thinking about work, or you're thinking about friendships, or whatever it is. It's really this way of, I want to ignite you to get excited and activated, to give yourself permission to maybe make a change anywhere, somewhere that's just not doing it for you. Like, don't waste years of your life living the life that's just not doing it for you. Like, that's not the vibe of what we're supposed to be doing here, in my opinion.
I love that. And starting small, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Just look at one area and take a small step. Thank you so much. I love this. I could, again, talk to you forever. I know these guys are going to love everything you had to say. Instagram is where you're most out there in the social media realm. We'll put your links out in the show notes for people to see your work and get in touch with you if they want to reach out, because I'm sure there's some folks that would love to work with you at a deeper level. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.